Exorcist. Whoa! Special podcast today. I am so excited today that I have someone that I've just seen on face to face, even though we are on the internet still, but it feels like face to face more so than we have before. It's a friend that I have met through, I know I've often talked about the Friends of Horror Weekly group on this podcast. It's a community through another podcast that has just been so lovely to be a part of. And that's how I know David. And so, David, I think without further ado, you should just introduce yourself.
Hey, Jamie, how are you? I'm David. I work in the film industry. I do work in post production on of TV shows and movies, but I'm also a big fan of the horror genre, and which is how we met through the Horror Weekly Facebook page. And it's an honor to have been asked to discuss Daniel Isn't Real with you.
Yeah, I watched this movie and I absolutely loved it. And as we often do when we in the community we watch movies that we love or we're really interested in, share with the other people in the community. I posted, I don't feel like I've seen anybody talk about this. And then David responded and was like, "Oh my God, you found a good one." And so I was like, okay, I don't think anybody else has seen this. And so I really want to do a podcast about it. So I was like, you look like a prime candidate.
I remember this film had quite a buzz about 5 years ago when it first hit, and then it just kind of died away. And that's about when I saw it was about 5 years ago. And then as it happens with films, it's like, oh yeah, that was a really good film, and then it just kind of fades from the memory, and then you're just kind of stuck with like, hey, that was a really good film, but I don't quite remember all the details. And then you mentioned it, and it's like, wait, that was a really good film, and then you're like, let's talk about it. So it gave me a chance to revisit it, and yep, sure enough, it's still a really good film.
Yeah. And, we'll talk about this, of course, as we go, because that's what we're here for. But I had a lot of similar feelings watching this movie to the movie that came out this year, It Feeds, which you also said that you liked. And I think maybe,
Yes.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, I feel like there's so many similar themes, but I don't want to get making basically another podcast. And so I was like, oh, this is a cool opportunity to bring someone else on with a whole different perspective, someone who's worked in the movie industry, who's got a whole different perspective on films, and who will be really smart about trivia, which is normally not what I do on this podcast, but I just think it'll be so cool for the audience. With that being said, I remember watching this movie and it opens up with like the shutter, dum dum. So was this from your memory? Was this like a indie film, like a smaller release film? Does this come to theaters?
I think if I remember the release date, this was a pandemic film. So this came about when was released either just before or just after the pandemic, but it was an indie release that didn't get that much theatrical attention and wound up streaming on Shudder. Now it's kind of available on other platforms. I know I rewatched it on Prime, and I think, by the way, we need to give your listeners a heads up. I think we're going to spoil the hell out of this film with discussing it. So I
Thank
would
you. Yes.
recommend that, if you don't want spoilers, go ahead, watch the film.
Yeah, I saw it on Tubi, which was
Okay.
which is a I don't know if I've even mentioned that, but like, yeah, on here it's a free app, and you put it on your
We
TV, your
love
smartphone,
to
and it's
be.
got loads of great horror movies. In Tubi we trust. So many great movies, and it's free, and you gotta sit through some ads, but it's all right. So I guess just to kind of jump into the movie, thanks for the spoiler alert, because yeah, I forget about that sometimes. I gotta say the first thing when I started this movie and then because I rewatched it again before, just kind of in prep to chat with you today, is the color. Like, I mean, I thought the movie was great, but then like the color and the sound design, but like immediately the first opening scene is like this like swirly color scene. And having you here today, I just was like, ooh, perfect opportunity to talk about colors. So could you say more about what you do as a colorist? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm pretty much in the dailies world, but I've done finishing color before. Essentially, when you shoot a film, when it goes into the camera, it doesn't necessarily look that way when you're done with it. They make adjustments and change the contrast or enhance certain colors or add windows and secondary color corrections to it to get things to either pop or de-emphasize certain areas. And you can completely change the way a film feels to an audience by simply adjusting the color of the film. It's like how you can watch like the remake of Suspiria and get this kind of naturalistic, very 1970s kind of washed out, the washed out colors versus the original 1960s or 70s Suspiria with Argento, and you get these incredibly saturated and they feel like very different films, even though they're telling very different stories.
Well, that's such a good point.
So that's kind of what I do, and sometimes you're kind of allowed to make your own follow your own narrative. So I had about 10 years ago, I remember I did a short film for a guy that did the finishing, and it was a story about a guy that wanted to commit suicide and a girl that wanted to kill someone, and they met at a coffee shop and they began going over different scenarios in which he could be killed. And it was fun because each fantasy sequence I was allowed to kind of just come up with a completely different color scheme, and that was kind of allowed to be very creative and fun. Other times, in fact, most of the time, the directors and cinematographers will have their own vision as to what you want the film to look like, and they will steer you in that direction. And your job, from the most basic standpoint, what I do is try to smooth out everything so that as the cameras are changing lenses and positions and the sun is moving through the sky, I just make everything feel smooth and on smooth it out and make it look beautiful throughout. That's the simplest version. But then you can start to get artistic and adjust contrast levels and really do some crazy things sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just honestly just so fascinated. This is just a side of like the because I love films, love horror movies, obviously, and like this is just I just have no idea how any of this works. So this is so fascinating to me, and that's why so many reasons I was excited to have you on. But this is so fascinating to get this insight. Would you want to name drop a few projects that you've worked on that people might know about?
Oh, I mean, I know the horror community loves the movie Last Shift. I was the final colorist on that. But that was probably one of the best features that I worked on. I love that film. I've done a few other, even though I don't like the film I Spit on Your Grave too, I'm really proud of the work that I did on it. Been Dailies colorist on a few big projects. I worked on Penguin. Netflix is a series called Black Rabbit that is dropping tomorrow that I was the Dailies
Ooh,
colorist on. I'm currently working on a project that I'm going to keep quiet about, but you'll definitely hear a lot about it in the upcoming months for Peacock. So it's a lot of TV show, and sometimes you'll work on stuff like I did season 2 of And Just Like That, and I did the dailies for that, and I've done things like HBO's Love Life season 2 and a couple seasons of Emily in Paris. So it's not always horror movies; it's a lot of just whatever kind of comes your way. I've done comedy, horror, drama, what you name it. So, but horror movies are the most fun.
yeah, I bet. I mean, being a fan of horror movies, that's cool. But yeah, what a neat job. That sounds so fun and creative. I mean, even though you get sometimes you get to put your own creative touch, but then
It
bringing other people's visions to life, a little bit of both.
it's a little bit of both. I mean, as always, it's fun. It's fun, but it's also a job, and sometimes you work with really creative people. When I was doing commercial dailies, I had a great relationship with Wally Pfister. I really loved working with Wally. Wally was Christopher Nolan's DP for a long time, and he was just an absolute joy to work with, and he and I connected great. Other DPs was like, no, we don't. It's like you just kind of roll your eyes and just kind of, okay, yeah, So it's always the pick of the draw, but it's always a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and you never quite know what you're jumping into, and it's always an adventure starting a new project.
I I love that kind of work. That's yeah, whenever you feel like you get to have fun doing your job and it feels like an adventure. So that's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
Now
A lot of times it
where do
does.
you
A lot of
oh,
times
oh
it doesn't feel like work.
exactly. Where are you from, David? I don't think I asked you that. I'm curious. I'm always curious about where folks are coming from in the group.
It's a complicated story. I've spent most of my time either in New Jersey or California. So I currently live in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, and when I graduated college, I moved to California. I happened to be born in California, but spent 17 years there, and then about 11 years ago, I moved back to New Jersey
Yeah,
because my wife got a job in New York.
I know what you mean. I'm from Alabama, but people ask me where are you from or where'd you move? Question I have a hard time answering is where did you move to to New Orleans from? I'm like, oh my god, I've just been living all over the place, but whatever. I get you. We're people of the world. We're people of the country, people of the
Yep.
community.
Restless spirits.
There you go. So yeah, I guess to get kind of back into the movie, I guess I'll just start by saying that other than the immediately the visuals were cool. From the therapist side of things, I immediately noticed I clocked, there's a little boy who is our main character in this movie, Daniel Isn't Real, who is name is gonna be
Name is Luke.
Luke.
Luke. Yeah.
Thank you. Luke was which is played by Miles Robbins, the adult version. Um,
Yep. Nepo
um
boy.
Is he? Who is
He
he?
is Tim. He, he is Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon's son.
Oh my god, as soon as you said that, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yep.
Oh my god, you're right. I
Yep.
gotta say though,
He and Patrick Schwarzenegger. Like, we got two nepos in the leads, and they do
two
great.
they do wonderful. Oh my god, like, that was one thing I was surprised about is their chemistry together is, one of the things that makes this movie so amazing in my opinion because
Yes.
we'll get into that later, but, like, their chemistry together is just what makes the movie so cool, but that's so yeah, I didn't clock that, the two nepo baby stars who actually did a really good job, I thought. But, yeah, so I'm always watching horror movies through the therapist lens because I can't turn my therapy eyes off. Is the
It's
young
okay.
boy who's in his home and, like, his parents are fighting, and then he walks over to this coffee shop well, the movie opens up and there's this horrible shooting, which kinda did, like, a jump scare for me, and especially in the year
Yes.
2025. I mean go ahead,
It's a
yeah.
genuinely shocking moment. This barista shootout, and I think it's supposed to be. It's supposed to put you very much on edge for the
Yeah,
remainder of the film. It kind of gives you a nice feeling that like this is not going to be a film that makes it a nice comfortable watch.
exactly. It was a shocking opener. There was a shooter comes in and shoots up a coffee shop. So, we see our, like, little boy character go from a household where his parents are fighting, and he basically wanders over to the site of the shooting, and he sees one of the victims just, like, laying there bloody and sprawled out, and immediately at that moment, his new friend Daniel appears, and I guess for me in that moment, because I'll kinda talk about my assessment process throughout this whole movie. At that moment, I'm thinking, "Okay, well, the little boy, Luke, has just had this traumatic experience. He is very young. He's what? I don't know, how old do you think he is? Probably, like
It's like
I'm not good with kids. 8? 8? Okay. Yeah, he's 8, and you can argue that that was a pretty traumatic
maybe
experience to
seven.
see something
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
but yeah, I mean, he has what essentially winds up being his parents splitting up
Mhm.
because the father can't be with the mother anymore because she has mental issues.
Yes.
So he witnesses that and then goes out and sees this traumatic, violent act, or the remainder of this traumatic act. So he broke at that point. Had a psychotic
Exactly.
break, and now we have this imaginary friend to help him cope with it.
Exactly, because that's what disassociation is. Honestly, natural, and it's not, arguably unhealthy. I mean, it's your way of coping with things that are hard, is you create this part of yourself to deal with something that you're just not psychologically ready to be capable of dealing with, and clearly a 7, 8-year-old boy is not. And
You
so
compartmentalize.
exactly, exactly. And so, yeah, that's where we are. He has this imaginary friend who has appeared to him. His name's Daniel to be his buddy, and he plays with him. And I loved the pacing of the first part of this movie where Luke was a kid. Like where it kind of progresses to Daniel and him like sword fighting with brooms, and like there was the overlay of like the actual sword sounds. It was just I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful.
It's a really tight montage, and it does kind of show the joy of it until it doesn't.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and so that becomes a theme later on with Daniel too, which we'll talk about. So yeah, at some point Daniel's like, "Ooh, why don't you put all of your mommy's antipsychotic medicines or whatever they were, antidepressants into her smoothie?" And so basically, baby
They tried to kill her, essentially,
yeah, exactly. They tried to kill Ronnie.
whether it was intentional or unintentional. But poor Mary Stuart. By the way, Mary Stuart Masterson plays the mom. It's great seeing her in anything. I'm always happy to see Mary Stuart Masterson from some kind of wonderful back in the day.
Okay, I'm not familiar with her.
So she was in Fried Green Tomatoes,
Oh my god,
and there you go.
the light bulb just went off. Oh my god, yes.
Yep.
She's the main character, right?
Yeah, she is the main character. Yes,
Wow. I love that movie so much. Well, because it's like, it's a Southern Alabama thing, I think. Well, it's somewhere in the South.
she's been in a ton of things. She was kind of a prominent star in the '80s. Uh, she was in what was the Johnny Depp movie where with Julian Moore where he's like Buster Keaton, Benny and June.
Okay, I gotta say, this is where it's good having guests on because my film knowledge, especially anything before like 1995, is not good.
Okay. Well, this was 1993, so yeah, it's fair enough. But anyways, yeah, she was kind of a thing, and then she kind of a little bit faded from the limelight, but she still does a lot of TV work, a lot of stage
Hey,
work, and she always nails it. Always. Great, really solid actress.
oh my god, yes. She was wonderful in this movie at, like, I don't know, towing this line of being this, like, warm mother, but just, like, lost in this psychosis that she just can't get out from under.
Yeah, it's a very complicated performance where she knows that she's trying to be a good mother, but knows that she can't.
Yeah.
She can't get out of her own way to help out.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So, yeah, that sucked for her in the movie, and, she made it through. I mean, she survived, but then she told Luke that he had to lock, old Daniel away. He had to lock little Daniel away,
In the
and
dollhouse.
so I locked him in and threw away the key. At this part in the movie, I'm thinking, "Okay, are we having a is this like a dissociative episode? Did we, like, create, like, a dissociative identity? Is this something else? Is this, like, a demon or an entity? Or is this schizophrenia? Is this even real? Is this, like, a hallucination?"
I think that's the whole tension of the film as you're watching this is
Yeah,
like, is Daniel real? Is this a real thing, an
yeah,
entity, or is it a projection of Luke's personality?
exactly.
And I think I think the film plays a little loose with it, but I think we do find out that I'll just say I think we know he's a demon at the end, but it certainly
Yeah,
plays
I
very
agree,
loose.
I agree. And so the first time I was watching this movie, I was kind of assessing, I was like, "Ooh, where's this going?" Because I just love the imagery, from, like, a psychological perspective because, all of us have sort of, like, parts of ourselves that we lock away because we don't really like it, like, I don't like that part of myself that, I don't know, sometimes gets really pissy sometimes. I don't know, just whatever, just making something up. And so, like, I tend to lock that away, or people that have violent or suicidal tendencies, they'll lock those parts away or whatever. And so it's like this mixture of like, is this literal? Is this imagery? Is this where is this going? And so I'm just like, I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time, just like assessing like what's happening here. Either way, I mean, even if it was just imagery at any point in the movie, I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, but it's definitely a journey.
Yeah. So then we get to, well, I guess that kind of like ends the childhood part of Luke. Was there anything else from sort of that piece that
I don't think so. I think we covered everything without getting too in the weeds.
Yeah, I think so too. So then we see Luke. Oh, go ahead.
No, so that's the first 10 minutes of the movie we've covered.
Yeah, oh my god, I know. Okay, I will say 2 pages of notes, and I will say we've gotten to here. I'll try not to keep you for more than an hour.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But it did I think that was the first 10 minutes. I do like to, track the movies on Letterboxd, and, like, review them, and just sometimes I'll go and read what other people thought about it, just to kinda check my own sanity about it, and I did see some people that reviewed this movie that said it was too slow, and so it's interesting that you said, "Oh, we've only covered 10 minutes." I like the pacing, but what did you think?
I think no, I think this is the pacing's appropriate. I mean, I can see why some people get impatient in kind of in the first 30 or 40 minutes. Once we enter the college years, I can see
Yeah.
him. It's like, oh, let's get to the destructive stuff. And how long is it going to be before Daniel shows up again? And this is taking too long, and we're this is too depressing.
Yeah.
So whatever. I think a lot of people have like having that jump scare every 5 minutes as opposed to
That slow burn
doing a
psychological
little bit of a
buildup.
slow burn. Yeah, because this is based on a novel, and novels like to take their time and kind of flesh out the character and build the universe. And I think it really helps kind of just laying the groundwork for the pieces in the first half of the film that will kind of play into how the second half works. Because you do have
Completely
the
agree.
we do cut to now 10 years later, and things have digress. His mother is now had a psychotic break, and he's in therapy now, and he's lonely and doesn't quite know how to associate with other people. So he's kind of feels very stuck and kind of alone.
Yeah, that's a really great summary of this phase of his life. The name of the book, I wrote that down because I didn't realize this was a book, but in the closing credits, it says, "In This Way I Was Saved," was the name of the book. And I wanna go back and read it because I mean, I love books, period. Normally, I find the books more interesting than the movies. The book topped this movie because it was really good, but I also do just I love character development. There was some folks that didn't like Sinners because of that, because Sinners is like an hour of character development basically, and then 45 minutes of horror maybe, but I it's all
Is
necessary, I
dealing
think.
Sinners is juggling
I mean,
so
that's a
many different themes and ideas, and it's like how
yeah.
uh, first of all, what an amazing movie Sinners is. Let's just get
Oh my
that out of the
god,
way.
yeah. I'm gonna say, I'm drawing a
It's like,
wild parallel here.
yeah, if you didn't like Sinners, is like that's fine, but you're not going to convince me that it's not a great movie because it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that was a
Uh,
wild parallel, but I was seeing, like,
yeah,
the character that takes some you gotta get to know the people and, like, lay the framework. It
and
makes the movie good.
Sinners is not about action and violence. It's a celebration of music. And so if you're not getting
Yeah.
into the getting to know the characters and celebrate the music, then it's also about the action and violence and the horror and the vampires and all that. But if you don't spend time getting to know the characters and the music, that's the joy of the film. And if you don't have the joy in the beginning, then you don't have the tragedy at the end.
Absolutely, that movie broke my heart. I've cried every time I've seen it at multiple points in it, but wouldn't have cried, I wouldn't have been so emotionally invested if it wasn't for the buildup, so exactly. Just like this movie is about yeah, it's about an imaginary or non-imaginary friend, but it's about, loneliness and mental illness and generational mental illness, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
about so many other things that's just underlying the story, and, the juxtaposition between the cr how sometimes if there's a phrase or there's something that's commonly said, like, there's a fine line between creativity and madness or something like that. It's
right.
a fine line. Another major theme of this movie.
That's definitely applicable because once he gets to college and once he free well we'll continue along with the story, but eventually he decide he has goes to a therapist, and the therapist says, let's you can see that you're lonely, you feel alone, did you have a friend that you could talk to, and suggests that, okay, maybe just as a rehearsal to going out in the real world, you can talk to your imaginary friend again. Because at this point, his mother has had a psychotic break and is now locked up, or at least locked up isn't quite the right word, but she's now in a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And he's got his own concerns. It's like, am I going to go down the same path as she is? And so the therapist said, let's go back to your imaginary friend. And the therapist, by the way, his name is, I got to look at the name. He is a really good character actor as well. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 uh as and I'm gonna get his name wrong, but it's Chuck Woody. But he's really phenomenal as well. Very interesting actor.
Yeah. He was so good. I mean, obviously, him being the therapist in the movie, I was watching his character very closely too,
Of
and
course.
so
Was there false notes that he did at as a therapist that you picked up on?
yeah, I thought so. I mean, listen, I tell my clients this all the time. I tend to not be an advice giving type of therapist. Like I believe that people are, should have their own agency and they know I don't meeting with them an hour a week or whatever, like I don't know anything about them. Like, they have the power to make their own decisions. I'm just there to like help guide them, whatever. And so you can go to 10 different therapists and they'll give you 10 different opinions, whatever. And so we do our best. So, anyways, but there's some things I would have definitely done differently. First of all, I will say, in all fairness, Daniel was not honest with his therapist. He told his therapist that because the therapist was really attuned to Daniel. He said, "Oh, wait, is there something wrong with your imaginary friend?" Because I guess Daniel had a reaction when he was talking about him, and Daniel was like, "No, it's fine." And so, don't lie to your therapist because it makes it really hard to, do a treatment plan or support you if you're not being honest. So I guess I'll just put that out there for people. But in all fairness, it's really hard to be open and honest and lay out your soul and honesty and just tell a who's someone who's mostly a stranger, unless you've been working with them for years, the complete truth about things, so I get it, but it did
Yeah.
complicate things, and so the therapist, I think, did give him maybe not the best advice because of that, and so by telling him to embrace this part of himself, I mean, that normally wouldn't be a bad advice, but I think because there wasn't that further assessment done on that part of him, I think that was dangerous advice because he didn't know the full scope of what this part I guess for and then this part of the movie, we still don't really know, is this a part of him, or is this
Right.
like an extra entity? And so because we don't know that, and so I think that that was dangerous advice. And of course, hindsight's 2020, but even me watching that movie, I was like, "Whoa, hang on."
And I realize I'm getting my chronology mixed up because he's still living with his mother because Daniel doesn't appear until after he or until the scene where the mother has a break and tries to kill Luke
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
scissors. And I realize that's when um, Daniel shows up.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I mean, things are just sort of very evidently going downhill with his mother, though. Like, there's a
So
scene where he, like,
apologize to
shows
all your listeners that have seen the film and are screaming at me right now. Like,
That's
no, it doesn't
okay.
happen that way.
That is okay, because I mean, the intent wasn't wrong. I mean, things are going downhill
Yeah,
with his mom. I mean, she's at home buried in newspapers and covering up mirrors and stuff, so it's like things are getting
yeah.
worse. So, yeah, but in that spirit, yeah, so, Daniel does take his therapist's advice to embrace this part of himself and goes home and literally unlocks him and out of the dollhouse.
The mother is now locked up after a moment where she tries to kill Luke with scissors. She was in a state, and we don't blame her. But and then Daniel begins to advise Luke on how to live his best life. Luke comes out of his shell and begins to really live life in a joyful, fun way.
Exactly, it's totally unparalleled with his childhood experience of Daniel. Everything's fine at first, everything's going great. He's helping coaching him on how to meet women, and he's helping him tap into his creative side, take photos, and tap into these other sides of himself, the creativity, the charm, the social parts, and, it's all fine and dandy at first, of course.
It is, it is. And then they go to the library, and then we start to see some stuff that maybe they have this fun game, and this is one of the first times that we start to see that Daniel maybe isn't an imaginary friend, is when he's reading quotes. He's with his now girlfriend Sasha. I forget the character's name, but it's Sasha Lane is the actress. She's pulling out books, and Daniel is standing behind her, reading the quotes to Luke, and Luke is reciting it back to Sasha, thinking that he somehow has memorized the start of all of these books, which of
Yeah.
course is impossible if Daniel wasn't an external entity.
Yes, definitely. I clocked that too. Definitely one of the first pieces of evidence. And then there's a part where Luke was at a party. He drank too much because, of course, at some point things aren't so fun anymore. And Daniel starts encouraging him to take shots and get drunker and drunker. Luke can't handle it, and so he starts throwing up. And then Daniel like actually picks up like a knife and like creates like a cut on his neck. Well, that couldn't have happened.
Well, I mean, I think the implication is that Luke could have done it to himself, but
Yeah, that's true. And I even did think at some point, even as he was reading these books out loud, because people can do crazy things, like maybe in some universe he is what his girlfriend in the movie referred to as like super brain. Maybe he's got photographic memory. And so I'm still on board with maybe this is part of him, but I don't know yet. But then the things start to add up.
the scene that's all in all the posters where Daniel has all of the answers to the exam tattooed on his. I got to admit, Patrick Schwarzenegger's looking pretty good in that
Yes,
scene.
I love that scene. I think I laughed out loud both times I watched that because I was like, where's this going?
It's a funny scene. It's a very funny scene.
People who are listening to this and maybe haven't seen this movie. And so basically it's Luke sitting in this exam in college and he's taking a test and you can tell he like can't remember the answers. And then suddenly Daniel appears in front of the classroom, takes his shirt off, and he's just got the answers written all over his body. And he's just like turning around, showing Luke where all the answers are, and no one else can see Daniel, of course. And so it's hilarious, but also very charming. And the music, the sound design in this particular scene really got to me too, because Daniel appears, and then whenever it kind of showed the like bigger picture of the classroom, the sound goes away because it shows you like, okay, this is what's going on in like Daniel and Luke's world, but then like this is what everybody else is seeing, and the music kind of like always reflected that, and I thought that was really neat.
And circle back to the library. The library ends on a really rough note because um, Sasha picks up the Bible and begins like, okay, we'll turn to this page. For the first time, Luke has a little bit of fun and begins quoting, I think, Dr. Seuss or something instead of the actual verse of the Bible, while Daniel is, reading the actual verse, and he gets very upset at
Yes.
Luke for defying his control. And it's the first time things start to get a little bit scary now between the two of them. Once Daniel's been unlocked,
And there was something
and
specific about the Bible verse too, because it was something, "I am your Lord your God," or it was something very it was, like, very, like, power
yes,
dynamic-y type verse, and I was that was the first thought I had watched the movie of, like, "Oh, is this, like, a religious or, like, a biblical?" Like, the demon thought first hit me in that part of the movie.
that's true. And then, of course, as if he is a demon, he would have, even though he was, goes ostensibly against the Bible, he would still have a lot of respect for the power of biblical verse, which is why I think Luke's transgression by not reading the Bible verse, not only is an affront to him, but it's also an affront to religion as well, which is
Yeah.
again,
It was offensive, he was offended.
yeah, he was offended. He's offended, and of course he's also unable to control Daniel or Luke at that point. So he has a girlfriend, and he's discovering art, and then we're moving forward, and then he meets another girl, and who's a bit more of a party girl than Sasha, who's this struggling artist. Daniel wants to be with her, but also has like some very strong feelings towards his current girlfriend. And Daniel whispers those magic words, said, "Look, let me inside you. I can be you, and you can." And that way, it's not cheating.
Yeah.
And
How about that for a cheating loophole?
and all of a sudden it's like now we're starting to see kind of an end game where it's like Daniel can take over
Yeah.
Luke's
And that's the
life.
first part in the movie, I think, where we see the body horror component, where
Yes.
Daniel and Luke are, like, merging and then kinda swapping or something?
Yeah, we start to see some of the incredible makeup effects where I think Daniel is crawling into Luke's mouth, or is that later? Maybe
That happens later, I
that's
think.
later.
That
This this is when the faces are kind of distorting and combining together.
yeah, that was really cool. How do you accomplish something like that? Because I think I read somewhere what the budget was for this movie, and it wasn't a lot.
I think some of it is careful lighting, B, practical effects by having a very, being very careful with how you're, you know, you know, essentially applying prosthetic plastic tendrils to everyone's face. You can do some basic CG these days at a very reasonable amount. You can farm out visual effects shots to other countries who can do it cheaper,
What?
which is so it's there are ways for independent filmmaking to do it. You can probably count on there's probably maybe 20 really big visual effects shots in this film. But the thing is when you have a low budget film, a big visual effects shot really pops out and is memorable because the rest of the film is kind of quiet. So if the
Yeah.
film is wall to wall CG, it all just kind of gets lost in the slop, as opposed to a film like this where most of it's real. It's like all of a sudden you go like, how'd they do that? It's like when I was watching when you're watching Let the Right Win In, which has a film that almost has no visual effects for the first hour, and then all of a sudden your little vampire climbs up a wall. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like all of a sudden that just pops out because you weren't expecting the last thing you're expecting to see is to see a shot like that.
That's such a good point.
It's what makes the special effects special.
And that was a point in the movie because I think at this point, I think at the movie's like an hour and a half, maybe, I don't
Yeah,
remember how long. This was probably
it's a
like
tight 100 minutes.
yeah, and so it's like, this is probably, like, halfway, maybe slightly past the halfway point, and,
Yeah,
it did get a little slow, somewhere, like, in the college years, but again, from just, like, development, like, showing, like, the progression of Daniel getting more sinister, and it's like, boom, you get this, like, body horror, like, shot, and yeah, exactly, I think that's such a good point, I didn't even think about that because it's just like, "Ooh, wow," it's just kinda stuck in the middle of this it just came out of nowhere, and it was the first major special effects shot, I think.
yeah. I
It
mean,
was really
except for
cool.
the swirling vortex in the beginning of the film.
Bookmark that because I wanna talk about the swirling vortex, because that comes back into play later. I wanna
It
get your
does.
opinion on that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, they change bodies because Daniel is gonna have sex with a girl on behalf of Luke and is not cheating. The contrast, and I didn't really catch this the first time, but it's just the chemistry between the 2, Patrick Schwarzenegger and Miles Robbins, is just so interesting, but also the contrast just start to get further and further. And so the second time I watched it, I really noticed this is whenever Luke was having sex with Cassie, he was just like, he had like a couple consent checks in there. It was like, is this
Yeah,
okay? Is this okay? Oh, that's so cool. You don't really see that in movies. That's something that like I just
it's
wish
really
everyone.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a really sweet and tender and gentle, and everybody in real life could take a note from that. Like, consent should be given often and, checked in for like every phase of romance and sexual encounters. And so I thought that was really nice.
And the scene with Sophie, I mean, it's a much more it's a much more aggressive
Yes.
sex scene, but it's still consensual. I mean,
Yeah,
Sophie, she does pull out the condom and it appears to be into it. But it's also it just kind of shows the again the differences between the way Daniel and Lynn Luke would handle this situation.
exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
After that, again, like with the aggression, then the movie takes a big aggressive turn where Daniel attacks Luke's roommate and
Yes.
viciously like presses his face up against a steam pipe. Oh, because
Uh,
he was annoying him earlier. Yeah.
uh, Daniel slash Luke just went off,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, now Luke's life is kind of falling apart. He winds up. It's never explained that he's thrown out of school, but it's presumed that at that point he is expelled.
Yeah, it's implied. I think yeah, so Daniel's starting to ruin his life.
Yeah, that this is when the narrative starts to get a little bit more fractured, I think, and I think this is when I think we're jumping ahead in time a little bit. You're kind of playing catch up with the film a little bit as you're watching it,
Yeah,
which is also you know could be the limitations of the budget and editing, and but also could be a design to show kind of how fractured Luke's life is at this point now as well.
yeah, because then we skip from the steam tunnels into the hospital, and Daniel there's a scene where Luke is telling Daniel, "Just go away. I'm just yeah, imagined you and I can make you go away." And so he closes his eyes and he opened his eyes and Daniel is right in front of that was a jump scare for me. I'm jumpy. I jump at all
Yes.
the if it's supposed to be a jump scare, I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna jump at it. Like if appears right in front of his face. There was another jump scare. Oh my god, I jumped at another place. There, I guess I'll just kind of jump to that since I'm jump to it since I'm jumping. He goes back to his therapist, and his therapist gives him medication. I guess to help.
With
I
the
guess under them.
hallucinations.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's some sort of antipsychotic to help. With the assuming it's a hallucination and so Daniel's like, "Oh no, don't take the medication. You're gonna make me go away." And so Luke's taking the medication thinking that's great. That's what I'm trying to do. And then Daniel does this big, "Oh, here I go. I'm leaving." And then he pops up and he's like, "Ha I'm just kidding. That's not gonna make me go
Yeah.
away." And I was like, "Ah."
And again, some further evidence that maybe Daniel is not not of this world.
Exactly. Not part of Luke because Luke can't just, suppress him or can't medicate him away that he's not going anywhere. Yeah, I was pretty convinced at this point that he was definitely definitely something external.
So I want to make a brief aside here. The film talks a lot about art. Cassie is an artist, and Luke is discovering his own kind of artistic sensibilities. And one of the things that the film pauses to go on is Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, which is a painting that he's looking at in there, which is a triptych painting. It's actually three different paintings on a wood panel that kind of folds in itself. And the three panels kind of show man's descent into hell, which
Oh,
is, starting with the Garden of Eden, just as Eve has had the apple, and then showing mankind as they kind of start to sully the earth. And then the final painting is mankind in hell and the apocalypse. And the film kind of goes the same route, where as we're following Daniel as he succumbs to temptation with Daniel, and he has this nice life for a while, and then it starts to get really dark, and then he at the end is in literal hell for a while. So I think that's kind of interesting, the parallel between the three, between that painting and the film.
I didn't notice that. That makes me wanna go back and watch it again for the 3rd time, but that's so cool. This movie's just so rich. I mean, every like, even watching the 2nd time, I caught stuff. I guess while we're talking about this, I was like, "Ooh, who could this be?" Like,
Oh,
considering,
which
like, it
demon?
yeah, or what sort of entity is this? And so I was researching, okay, like, he seems to have some affinity for the Bible, so we'll assume he's from, like, the Christian, realm of things.
We're
Which
assuming he's thousands of years old at least.
yes, because he says that. He says that at some point in the movie, he says, he's been traveling for millennia or years or something. He alludes to he's himself being very ancient or old.
So I think we get the sense that he's a parasitic demon because I think he jumps from one person to another once
Yeah.
that person's used up.
Yes. So under that assumption that he's old, he's, like, from the Christian realm of things, he jumps from people to people. I came up with Samael? Samael?
Yep.
So, yeah, this is familiar?
Well, that's the same demon from the Halloween franchise that they talk about.
Is it? Oh my god.
Yeah, you go into it's is it Sumerian or is it like Celtic or something like whatever it. I forget. It's such an awkward thing in the Halloween films where all of a sudden Donald Sutherland walks into a classroom and sees the word Sam Hale written on it, and it's like, oh yes, that's the demon from. Okay, whatever.
God, it's like a little side quest in Halloween.
Yeah, it's like okay, this is clearly a pickup shot that they did 6 months after they started filming to try to give it a little something, whatever it is. John Carpenter was clearly drinking beers, a lot of beers at the time, but it's very awkward.
I appreciate that little piece of knowledge, that little nugget.
Watch Halloween 2. If you go back and watch Halloween 2, the Rick Rosenthal, John Carpenter one, it's kind of awkwardly sandwiched in there.
Yeah. So Samael, demon of temptation, it doesn't invade you, but you have to invite it in, and then like it's good at first, and then it turns on you, and then it's like charm and charisma, it's creative, and so that was what I came up with just for fun, little funsy side project, which apparently
Fun.
shows up in Halloween.
That's cool.
Yeah. God, I feel like I really got us off track there with my demon
That's all
research.
right. All
Oh
right. At this point, we go back to the therapist who tries to
yes,
hypnotize him in his
yes.
house.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. Okay, back
I
to
can
the
imagine
therapist.
this scene drove you nuts.
It did. It did. Before that, though, you mentioned something that we didn't I do wanna come back to that because that scene did drive me nuts for a lot of reasons. But, we forgot to tie in the point you touched on it, but I think I really wanted to drive this home, is that, like, Daniel is a demon that jumps from person to person, and we know that because, the movie opens with, the shooting in the coffee shop, which then Daniel
That's right.
appears, but then Luke goes on a fact-finding mission
That's right.
to
Yes.
yeah, to research the shooter, 'cause I guess how did he figure that out? How did he make that connection? I don't remember.
I think he found out when the shooting was. He found out the name of the perpetrator, and then he went to visit the parents of the perpetrator and say, "Look, was your son experiencing any kind of any issues before?" And from that, I think he's able to extrapolate that Daniel was inside the perpetrator that did the shooting, and then jumped to him. At least we're assuming that that's what happened.
Yes.
Once the perpetrator got shot to death by the police, ostensibly what I guess would have been suicide by cop kind of situation.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't like when movies, like, over-explain things. I think this movie did a good balance between showing us, but, like, not explain. So, yeah, we imply most of this, but then there was a drawing that the shooter did of Daniel. I mean, it said Daniel on it, so I was like, "Well, shit, that's pretty apparent." But that
There we
seemed
go.
yeah, so it seems like, Daniel did jump from him to Luke, and so I was like, "Alright, so that's, there you go." I don't he's a jumping demon.
And I think it was one of those. Again, this film is a lot of art references. I think this was kind of very inspired by Francis Bacon's kind of the work that he did with the sort of dual faces. I think a lot of the demon designs that they have in the last third, come from sort of playing on themes like that.
That's interesting because when I first reviewed this movie in Letterboxd, I gave it 4 stars because I loved everything about this movie except for the demon design. I don't know, something about it just was like, I don't know, but actually now that we're watched after I watched it again and now that we're talking about it, I don't know, there's something about it that was a little funky to me, but I dislike it
Well,
less as
it
time
kind of
goes
looks like
on.
he's got a dollhouse on his head for a little bit. So but I admit it's kind of a strange design.
It just didn't do anything for me.
I mean, I kind of thought it was unique, but it's not particularly frightening in terms of design. I didn't hate it or bump on it for any reason. I just thought it was kind of
Yeah,
just a little bit different.
I prefer that when movies just don't show the thing. Sometimes I think it's scarier when they just don't show the like, Smile 2 is something that comes to mind. I don't know, probably
Oh
people have probably
yeah,
different opinions. I think when things are
this
more,
is
like, left to the
great. I'm
imagination.
sorry. Let's
Oh,
just say that Smile 2, I think, is just
it
great.
is amazing.
Uh, thank.
That's like a 4.5-star movie for me until you get to I don't
It
know.
was for me.
Yeah, it just that's just my I think sometimes when things come out of, like, the imagination, you make it literal on the screen, it's like, oh, you kinda took some of the fear out of it, and that I think that's what happened with me in this movie. When it showed the demon, I was like, it was scarier in my own imagination or something."
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So we're back to the therapist. So, Daniel is freaking out because now he's realized that he's got some shit that, is chaotic and it's bad, and he's afraid that he's gonna do something bad because if Daniel can invade his body and, cause harm, which it seems like maybe at that point he already knows that Daniel is trying to go after his girlfriend?
Yeah. So the therapist tries this what do they call the bowl with the where they create the sonic the high pitched sonic sound to kind of hypnotize him to get rid of Daniel
Yeah.
in the hopes, or at least repress him again, so that he
Yeah.
can move on with his life. And of course, Daniel at this point has grown much too powerful to simply be hypnotized away.
Yes. So, I guess my first beef with that was, don't make house calls. Not I have a lot of clients that I really care about and probably would
Yeah.
really trust, but, like, just not recommended to make house calls. That's not a good idea for a lot of reasons. So, don't do that.
Yep.
Second of all, it just was apparent to me that well, I don't know, that's tricky because we know it's a movie, right? And so it's a movie, but if this was real life, Luke would have just needed a higher level of care. Individual one-on-one therapy for, an hour a week is not the right level of care for someone who's experiencing if this wasn't a demon, if this was like schizophrenia and he was having psychotic episodes,
Precisely.
a therapist like me or like the one in the movie is not gonna be able to give the proper level of care. So he would have needed a higher level of care. But, through the lens of this movie, showing up his house, not a great idea. And so he decides to do these, Eastern approaches, which is fine, but I don't know, something about, like, dual hypnosis was pretty scary. I don't know anything about that. I've been hypnotized, and I just can't imagine being in a dual hypnosis state with a client. I don't know that that's a thing because somebody's gotta be in control, and so
Yeah.
he's left he's left no adults in the room. If you're a therapist listening to this, or if you've ever heard of such a thing, please let me know because I don't know everything, but seems pretty outlandish to me and scary and, not safe, which turns out it wasn't.
No, no, our poor therapist does not make it out of the hypnotherapy in one piece.
He does not. He meets Daniel we're in this world.
Yep. And Daniel is not in a particularly happy. Is not particularly happy to see him.
Yeah, he is not. I could deeply relate to this as a therapist where he, like, meets Daniel, he's, like, has this total meltdown, and he's like, "Ah!" He's like, "Well, what did you expect? Like, you did this under dual hypnosis, you said you wanted to meet Daniel, and you met Daniel, and then you just, like" he just has a total fucking meltdown, like, right in the middle of this, and it's like that was funny to me because can't say I've never done that before because I have, but, because 'cause we're all
Of
human,
course.
therapists are human too. So, it was also funny to me because it was like, "Ooh, I'm in control, I'm in charge here," and it's like, "Ah, shit, what this is really scary."
Yep. And I give credit to again to that actor
Yeah.
Chutwookie, who again is I think does an amazing job in the role as the therapist, playing all those parts. Like I'm in control until I am definitely not in control.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of that in this movie that Daniel's driving, whether from internally or the people around him. That's interesting. It's a good theme.
So at this point, I believe Daniel has taken over Luke entirely and banished Luke's psyche to the dungeon in the basement of whatever psyche that Daniel lives in. And
Yeah.
Daniel goes to see Sasha Lane, Cassie.
I called it the trophy room in my notes because you see the gun that the shooter used in, the coffee shop, and then you see the knife that he had just used to kill the therapist. It's
Now the
just
the creature that he meets with the sort of elongated, the wind with the odd makeup that pushes the tendrils to the left hand side of his face. That's the previous person that was possessed, right? And he's been kind
that's
of deformed.
I think so. That's
I think
what
so.
I think so too, yeah, because I think he said
Yeah.
some I think he asked him, he said, "Are you such and such?" I forget what the name
Yeah.
was. He didn't answer, but it seemed to be implied that
Yeah.
he had, which is kind of a scary implication because if, like, if he was in there, does that mean, like, his soul was lost, or something? I don't know. What does that
I
mean?
think
That's
so.
scary.
I think it means, yeah, that the Daniel's still kind of living off of his energy, or that it absorbs, that he wasn't able to escape Daniel's
Ooh,
possessiveness.
well, that's really bleak. I don't really think about that, but that's really bleak because then we know what happens to Luke. And so I guess, does that mean that Luke is gonna be
I don't I don't think so. Luke manages, yeah, because Luke manages to get out
Yes.
and fight. So anyways, Luke is trapped in this dungeon, and he's kind of lost in this labyrinth of Daniel's psyche. And Daniel, using Luke's body, goes to visit Cassie and tries to possess or take her too, or kill
Mhm.
her. And she manages to escape. And in the pursuit of Daniel pursuing Cassie, Luke realizes what's going on, realizes how much love he has for her, and gets out of the labyrinth and jumps into, I guess, this vortex that's at the outskirts of this dungeon, which I'm assuming is supposed to represent a transition, or a way to a leap of faith, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think I had really fully formed a thought about what that was, but I like the way you put that.
You need to overcome this very
Yes.
human. It's like to jump into this endless void in order to save Sasha, or Cassie. And he does, and is able to at least reappear on the same plane as Daniel again. And then they fight on the roof of this warehouse where everyone has kind of converged. And Daniel and Luke fight in a scene that mirrors the broomstick fights from the beginning.
Yeah.
And Luke is able to push Daniel off the building and fall to his death, along with himself, essentially committing suicide,
Yeah.
which is one of the notes that I don't quite like, the fact that the only way to defeat Daniel was suicide. But I guess it kind of it wouldn't be a horror film if it wasn't.
Yeah, I that was really sad. It was so sad, and I thought that, Cassie's character at the end where her reaction was just so, I don't know, it just felt so, like, authentic. I don't know, it was just this, like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like, shock, but also, like, sadness. Yeah, that was really it was a really sad ending, so yeah, well, the movie's obviously spoiled, but spoiler alert, sad fucking ending. It was really
yeah,
sad, but you're right, David. I think the good news is that he isn't trapped. Maybe I think that
yeah.
that's maybe I think
Because
you're right. I think that that means
the
he's not
last
trapped.
shot of the film is of Daniel's point of view as he kind of rises up, looking down at, he's now kind of in this limbo, as he's now needs to find another person to, uh,
Yeah.
that would be open to his nature. But he
Yes,
has been
exactly.
defeated.
Yeah. Ooh, where's he gonna go? And what other way could he have possibly defeated him? I don't know. I don't know. In a traditional, like, demon possession, maybe it would have called in an exorcist. There's even a mode of therapy where you can send out, what we call external, unattached burdens out through, like, just, like, basically kill it with kindness kind of a way. So, I don't know, it's like, it's hard to say, but, yeah, like you said, it wouldn't be a horror movie if it didn't end in a horrible way, so a horrifying way, but
Yeah.
just one of the many horror
So
elements.
It's a downbeat ending. It works for the film, but I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think that it quite earns that ending the way it doesn't. It was just like, oh, okay, I guess he is dead. But
Yeah.
it's the one kind of false note for me. So it's a 4-star film instead of a 5-star film. It's still really good.
Yeah, it's really good, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfect movie, I agree, but I loved it, and I found so many more interesting things about the movie watching it first time, second time, and even talking through it with you. This was really fun. Is there anything that we
Yeah.
missed?
The director of this is Adam Egypt Mortimer. Uh,
Okay.
this is one of 3 films in his proposed Void trilogy. His next film it was a film called Archangel, which I started to watch, but I didn't finish it for this. I was like, I want to watch this for the episode, and I didn't finish it. But essentially, it deals with characters that have to kind of cross into a void to, on their spiritual journey. So his next film was Archangel. The guy from True Blood, he's the lead of it, where he plays a character like a homeless guy who convinced that he was a warrior in another realm and has to fight off demons from invading Earth. But it's very kind of, it plays around again with this sort of reality and fantasy elements.
One's right up my alley. I can't wait to watch it.
That's on Tubi right now,
Okay.
but I can't tell you how it is. And then I don't think he's made the 3rd film yet in the trilogy. But
Okay.
um, but beyond that, yeah, I think that, gosh, we covered a lot, didn't we?
We did, and so this has been, like, 10 out of 10 fun for me, so
Great. Well, thank you for having me on.
well,
This is a pleasure.
you're welcome, thank you. I do ask all my guests that come on, and the question of what because this is the nature of the podcast, it's the Exorcist Within. What demons did you exorcise through Daniel Isn't Real or talking about in this podcast? Just the spirit of the question is like, what are you taking away?
I think I'm taking away to certainly be more open-minded towards the mental health of other individuals.
Oh, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Yeah, compassion and just curiosity can really go a long way. Not that I didn't think you were in the first place, but it's just by framing this movie through mental health lens and like kind of picking it apart. I don't know. I something about like just like the startling shooting scene at the opening of the movie and just underlying religious fuckery in this movie that just feels so relevant right now and it just feels scary.
Yes.
It's like something that's like running in parallel to like today that just feels I don't like horror movies that parallel real life too much. And it's like this is such a fantastical movie, but really is it? I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
I
that's like what I'm
know.
thinking about right
We've
now. I don't
been
know.
living in such a, we've been in this the quote unquote interesting times now for so long. Unfortunately, it's just starting to feel like commonplace, and it's so exhausting and mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love for things to kind of settle down for a minute.
So I guess I mean, that's sort of the negative, but the positive spin on that is like, hey, it's nice to have a moment of joy to just be able to enjoy movies, hang out with new friends,
Yes.
and just put that shit aside for a minute because if you dwell on it too long, I know for me, I'm speaking for myself here, just I get bogged down in it.
And I'm overjoyed I got a chance to revisit this, because this was one that I was like, this was really good, and I didn't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
So it was great to go back and look at it again. I was like, oh, this really was really good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to share this with all of our friends and publish it. So, again, thank you so much for your time. This was so fun.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.